Okay, so we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am so excited to introduce our guests for tonight. So, Nicole and Tylor Franklin run the amazing blog and here on Substack, Not Your Ordinary Plan. I met them with my partner Kyle when we were in China. We were traveling around and we met you guys. So, really excited to have you on. Today, Nicole and Tylor are going to be sharing basically the financial independence world and how writers can think about that. But I'll leave it to you, Nicole and Tylor, to introduce yourself and a little bit about your journey. If you want to kind of like clue us into how you got to where you are and kind of where you're at right now. And also you're in Thailand. So if you want to talk a little bit about your travels as well.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you so much for having us, Amy.
Yep.
Yay for us meeting on a random food tour in China and somehow talking about freelance work to financial independence. You just never know who you're going to meet while traveling or putting yourself out there. But yeah, so I'm Nicole. This is my husband, Tylor.
Hello.
And we've essentially had about a 10-year journey, like that we can recall, like in our finances. So our big spiel is we've essentially gone from $90,000 worth of student debt to our first $1 million in an investment portfolio in the last 10 years. So it's been quite a journey. And for us, we've been like really lucky because it has been a duo for us for about 10 years. So we do want to acknowledge that it's been the two of us saving and doing some of these goals together. And we know not everybody is on, that same page, but we know so many people that also do it solo and do amazingly. So yeah, our journey goes back. Essentially, we are newly graduated from college. We got married very young. We got married. We went on a honeymoon to Thailand back in like 2017. And it was like the first time we ever met people that weren't working 9 to 5s, 40 years. Everyone was talking about how they sold their business or I'm a freelancer. I am on a sabbatical. I work part-time, like all these crazy things that for us, we had never heard because we never knew anyone that did anything other than like the standard 9 to 5. You work for 40 years, you get your 2 weeks of vacation and you're happy. So that's kind of like our backstory of how the wheels kind of started turning for us, just newly into our careers. So we started our entry-level careers. And yeah, soon in, we realized, wow, this can definitely be a rat race. If you're not careful. Like Tylor worked as a chemist and myself as a nurse. And yeah, we essentially
I think we were feeling a bit of burnout pretty quickly in our careers. And so we had to find a way to pivot. We said we didn't want to do this for the rest of our lives. And luckily we stumbled upon a YouTube video actually that talked about financial independence. And that was our first exposure. We realized we needed to take a few more steps to get there, like paying down our debt.
Yep.
And then we started investing and, kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, so our story, so we paid off our debt. From there, we essentially we were lucky to live in a low cost of living area. We had our expenses quite low, had increased our savings rate to about more than 70% of our income. At that time, we were picking up overtime, working a lot of extra shifts, and we eventually, a few years later, reached Coast-Fi, which is a very important milestone that I think a lot of the writers on the call are going to be really interested in, because I think it's like the best form of financial independence and is very obtainable for many people. So we reached Coast-Fi in about 2022. And at that time, we had decided we want to go and travel, like all the people we had met a few years ago. So we took a 3-month sabbatical back in 2022 when we had reached this milestone. And yeah, we loved it. And I mean, flash forward to today, we're traveling full time, mostly because of these milestones and how much we love to travel and just being, not almost in an ordinary life. Like we really enjoyed being able to step away and take control of what we love. So lots of babble in there, but essentially from Coast-Fi, we were very committed to essentially reaching full financial independence. So for that next period of time, we were grinding hard, working very hard to get there as fast as possible, or so we thought. Because about 3 years ago, we were actually in a bad car accident that left us injured. I was unable to work for about 6 months, and it essentially made us really reevaluate like our path. Like, are we going to only work to just reach this one goalpost and then be happy or then do the thing we wanted to do. So it unfortunately made us really think hard. And from pretty much shortly after the accident, we shifted our goal from saving to retire to saving to travel and pursue what we wanted to do, which is full-time travel.
Yeah.
So a year later, we quit our jobs, sold most of our belongings, have our 40-liter backpacks, and we've been in Asia for the last 16 months. So we're saying hello today from Bangkok, Thailand is where we currently are in an apartment. And that's kind of just been a glimpse of our story. It's kind of like fluctuated in like what we thought we wanted, but really the main thread has been financial independence, and especially Coast-Fi has led like our path. And we really think everyone on the call listening, we'd just love to yell like, look into Coast-Fi.
Oh, your audio is cutting out. Sorry, Amy.
Using the desktop version. Is it better?
Yep, now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, this is my first time using the desktop version of Substack Live, and it doesn't like my microphone. But to roll it back to something that I think a lot of us on the call, especially like in the writer community, like is a little taboo to talk about money. And that's something that we're always trying to kind of shake off here at Make Writing Your Job, because we have a community of amazing professional writers who are on this call. And the thing that I'm curious, just to roll it back a little bit, is to think about what is like FIRE or financial independence. Like, what does that mean? Like on a simple level, like I would love to kind of see like when you guys first heard of it, like what did it mean to you and why was it something that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. So financial independence essentially means you're no longer dependent. Most people rely on an employer for their income. And when you've reached this milestone of financial independence, it means you can pay for your lifestyle for the rest of your life, essentially. It means you've saved up and invested, usually because inflation, if you just tried to save all this money in a bank account, um, inflation would eat away at it eventually. So most of us in the FI community end up invest that money as well to fight inflation. But,
Yes.
yeah.
So in theory, you have amassed a pot similar to your retirement fund, but it might be earlier. And you can withdraw a certain percentage off of that bulk of money to sustain your lifestyle forever or in your retirement years.
Yeah. Yeah, you can think of it like normal retirement. People just saving money their whole lives, and then hopefully they hit a point they never have to work again. FI is the same thing, but people are just starting it earlier.
Yes. And we use the term FI, the full term is financial independence, retire early, because we really do think it's work optionality that we're after. Because if we were to say retire like in our 30s, we don't think it's very realistic to think I'll never work a day in my life again, or I'd never pursue a passion that would make enough money. So for us, we just like to say FI because I think it's a lot more relatable and realistic.
Yeah, and I think that what is really, I love that your perspective, because I think that sometimes I meet people here and even in San Francisco who are like, I just want to retire and do nothing. And I love how you guys have shaped this around work optionality, around travel. And I know that there's a lot of writers on this call right now who want to travel and want to just kind of pick up and just travel the world and hang out in Thailand or China. And that's so cool that you guys can kind of be able to be in charge of your destiny, and you've created like the financial infrastructure to do so. So really excited to have you guys on and share. And so I guess the one question that I have for you is like, if there was like a specific moment, I know you kind of outlined a few moments in your story that there was like, you know, a car accident or moments that you're like, we need to do something different. But was there a moment that you really fully realized you were not going to do things the traditional way? Was it in Thailand? Was it after the car crash? Like, what was that one moment or one conversation?
Yeah, I think you said it best, those two moments in particular. Um, our honeymoon in Thailand, we were finally exposed to people who had a really different mindset to what we've seen in America. People who weren't subscribing to that 2-week vacation trap that we kind of have in the US. And people were taking gap years, selling their homes and businesses to just travel for a year or 2 years or something. So, yeah, I think that was our first. And then
Yeah.
she talked about the car accident.
Yeah. Then the car accident, I think, shifted that. So one thing we learned in these, especially last few years, is that having the thought of escapism, like I'm escaping to something better. Oh, if I don't work, it's going to be better. If I don't have to do anything, it's better. I think we've really shifted from a thought of escapism to essentially, how can we make financial independence be flexible for us? And how can we embrace what we want to do today and not run away from something we didn't like? Because I think I think that's how we used to think, which I don't think is very healthy. And I think a lot of the listeners on here today maybe can relate because you probably like maybe aspects of what you do, or maybe you want to do it in a different capacity, less, more. I want to work remote and do it. Like, I think there's just so much flexibility in the way you could think about things. And like back when we first learned about fire, we didn't even know the half of it.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the writers that came on one of our earlier Substack lives talked about how she kind of needed to structure her finances to think about going on a sabbatical for a year. And that's kind of like something that a lot of people think about. But what I think is really unique with what you guys have built is like you could take a sabbatical forever. And that's so cool. And like such a different way to think about things. And so, but one of the things that that I think a lot of writers on this call are curious about is like when you say that your investments can now sustain your lifestyle forever, like what does that actually mean on a practical level, on a day-to-day level? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So essentially, we follow this rule called the 4% rule in FI. And what it breaks down to is if you multiply your expenses um, every year by 25, you'll get a number, and that's called your FI number.
Yeah.
And if you can save and invest to hit that number, then you're at FI. Essentially, you can leave your job and you will be sustained indefinitely with your current lifestyle.
Yes. And there's caveats to that number. So it's just like on your notepad, you calculate, okay, I spend $40,000 a year minus 25, say that's $1 million. You could also have very fluctuating lifestyle costs. You could maybe start a family. You might be helping family. So, and there's also limitations. That number was calculated based on like a 30-year time year projection back when that study was done in the 90s. So there's also flexibility in that number, but I think it's a great guideline and like kind of the practical way of how a lot of people that are financially independent, they know how much they can withdraw. So for us, say we had $1 million amassed, we could safely, and if 1 million was our fire number, like we knew we could live off of $40,000 a year, until for the rest of our lives, we could withdraw 4%, so $40,000 a year every year, like from our brokerage and all of our different accounts, depending on your age, and that would cover your cost of living. So that in a nutshell is how it's sustained, but there's so much more detail and nuance to it. But that's great to give anyone a good example of where I'm at.
Yeah. And I think that that's helpful to kind of have like, I think that it can be tricky when a lot of us are like thinking about finances if we're not used to it, of like thinking about like, okay, what frameworks, what do I do first? How do I conceptualize this? And a term that you brought up earlier was this idea of coast fi. So would love to dive into that and why it's such a powerful concept for people, especially people in creative careers.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, before.
Yeah. So essentially, coast fi, you saved enough before your traditional retirement. Typically, these people are putting a lot of money in, a few years span. They're going heavy into the investing up front, and they're going to let that pot of money just grow in the background for the rest of their life so that they can retire at a traditional age later on.
Yeah. So you're essentially front loading your investing. So say you're increasing you're decreasing your income, maybe increasing or decreasing your spending, increasing your income. You have a high savings rate, and say you're able to put away a lot of money early on. There's like a calculation that would show that if at this amount of money that you have saved, so for example, we have some examples up here for people. Say you are currently 40 years old and your traditional retirement age is going to be 65. So you have about a 25-year time horizon. If you and your annual expenses are going to be $60,000 a year, is what you assume through retirement. If you put away about $275,000 saved, that money today at 40 will grow to be your full fire number of 1.5 million by the time you're 65. So essentially, you have done all the heavy lifting up front, and that money at an estimated about 7% inflation growth rate, will compound and grow to be your full FIRE number. So like we love it because it essentially takes away so much almost financial responsibility. Like you can be a little like, I want to say you can take more risk. Like nobody wants to feel like they're behind financially or like ruining their like, oh, I'm not going to be ready to retire. And that weighs on you heavily, I think, especially with freelancing. Like, am I making enough during these ups and downs to be prepared in the future? So I really think Coast-Fi is like one of the most like reassuring FI landmarks you can make.
It really means like you've already taken care of your future self when you hit that Coast-Fi number. And I think with people that have really volatile income streams, that can be a big like mental relief.
Yeah. And even like we also stress too, like it's not too late to start investing, but the earlier you do, it is better. So for example, if you were 30 years old and you say so that example of when you were 40, if you were 30 and did the same thing, that number would go down from 275,000 to 140,000 would be needed with like a 10-year difference. So there's lots of calculators online too. People can look up Coast-Fi calculator and they can find and kind of put in and play with it. But I think we also wanted to stress that it might not be as much as you think. I think a lot of people think, oh, 1.5 million, that's a lot of money to have it investing.
Coast-Fi is a much more achievable number than a traditional FI number. Typically, it's a 10 to 20% of what people would calculate for their FI number. So much easier to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I wanted to highlight just like the really kind of like the benefit of all of this and the frameworks that you're sharing, which is this idea of what you mentioned earlier of peace of mind and being able to have more optionality and more, in the volatile careers of us writers and freelancers and creatives, it can be very, a lot of ups and downs and kind of feelings of, oh no, what's happening next in the world? And so I love how what the frameworks that you guys have implemented successfully in your own lives have been able to give yourselves freedom and optionality. And I think that a lot of people on our call are kind of thinking about that and people in our community. The other term that you mentioned is Baristify. So what is Baristify and how is it different than Coast-Fi?
Yeah, Baristify gets its name because people who are doing Baristify are typically working part-time while also being financially dependent. So it kind of means you're semi-retired is another way to say it. You're going to hit your FI number typically. I'll give an example. If your FI number is $1 million, that means you're spending $40,000 a year. Baristify could be half as much. You could hit a FI number of $500,000, and that means you're going to have $20,000 per year coming in passively from your investments. But to make up for the difference, that you just have to earn $20,000 per year working seasonally or working freelance, and that'll help you hit what would traditionally be a FI number sooner.
Yeah, and I will say with Baristify, it doesn't necessarily imply that you can like retire early or like it's kind of you're indefinitely replacing that income stream. So we think the best combo is you hit Coast-Fi and the more like you kind of have a combination of both. So you've hit that Coast-Fi number, you can retire at 65. In fact, if you increased your Coast-Fi number, maybe you can retire at 55, depending on that amount. And you can kind of keep etching back if you want to maybe be fully retired earlier, or you're supplementing your income earlier to do what you want now, like taking that 1 year to travel in Asia and not having to worry that your future retirement plans are going to be pushed back or impossible in the future. Or you take time off to refresh before you start like a new writing gig, whatever your terminology is, writers out there. Before you start a new like passion project or you become, I don't know. I think being able, like having permission to step away or permission to let yourself grow outside of a job that you see as only making money as like your goal, I think is just so valuable and is something that we actually are forever grateful for from our own current experiences of being in Asia. It's been like the first time in our lives where we've gotten to step back and think, okay, what do we actually like to do? Because our identity was so tied to our careers. Like, I like medical things, so I'm only good at medical things would be, and maybe I like to do some other creative things. But because I don't have that to like lean on anymore, like I don't need to go and make my job as like a nurse. Um, so I don't need to make my job as a nurse anymore. Instead, I am stepping away. We've been able to see what we're really passionate about. And for us, that's actually been writing. Tyler's been doing some more writing. We've been learning Spanish. We've been just kind of we've just having, like, even for me medically, I've decided I want to do some different type of medical education. So I think stepping away and not having the pressure of income or your identity to make your uh, work is like so valuable.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of pressure off, especially the writing community. If you don't have to hit these deadlines because you're dependent on the income, I think it really frees up some mental space to make your writing more personal or creative. Or you can take little breaks if you're getting burnt out.
Yeah, and staving off burnout is something that I think a lot of us deal with, like myself also. Like I think that having those cushions, having that ability to just like take a step back and like what you guys were talking about, reassess where you're at, what you're wanting to do, what you're not wanting to do. I think all that stuff is really valuable. So if you were thinking like rolling back to like savings rates. So if you were talking to a freelance writer who is earning around $60,000 to $100,000 per year, like what savings rate do you think that they should aim for? Obviously, just kind of thinking like conceptually in the terms of like if you were a freelance writer in that range, like what would be something that you think would be kind of like doable or kind of thoughtful for somebody who wants to pursue financial independence?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And our answer is it depends. So the biggest question is going to be what you're already spending. Like, how much does your life cost? Because being able to adjust what your life costs, like if you live in a high cost of living area versus a low cost of living area, it already makes a big difference. Or so essentially, what your life already costs, you should calculate how much you're saving and investing if you are already, or saving and investing. So you should determine already what your savings rate already is. Say it's about 10%. I think at that point, 10% is a bit on the lower end if you do want to achieve Coast Fi realistically and Fi. So I think rather than making it, I have to increase it to 70% overnight, maybe making small increments yearly or making a plan to, I mean, ideally, hopefully you're raising it up 30, 40%, 50. I mean, for us, 70% is very high, even in the financial independence community. And a lot of that is attributed to us having a low cost of living area. And we honestly just, we're not really spenders too. We just kind of, yeah, we're not as much spenders, but I think everyone will be, it depends for the type of person you are. But I do think it's important to say that hopefully it can be a goal for anyone out there listening to determine where you are, because a lot of people don't like to look at the numbers. I know it's not very fun to look at the numbers, but just to be honest with yourself. And from there, make it like an incremental goal. Like, can I save 10% more next month? 20% more next month? And I think you'll find it easier the more you chip away at it rather than being like, all right, I have to save 70% of my income and live off of $10,000 a year. You know,
Yeah.
Might not, make sense. So, yes.
And a point I want to stress too is that it's not really dependent on your income as much. It's more about how much you're going to put back in the bank at the end of the day. If you have a savings rate, say, of like 70%, you could reach Fi in less than a decade, technically, versus someone who's doing like 40%. It might take around 20 years. And then that just gets lower and lower the closer you get to 10%, basically, where you're going to work your whole life to a traditional retirement age or even older if you're saving under 10%, unfortunately.
Whole life as until 65, and hopefully you are prepared at that point. But we personally don't like to rely on, like for us, we also don't rely on pension plans, Social Security. Like all of our calculations are actually without any of that. It's all on us, and anything else is a benefit.
So this, yeah, I think that I want to like stress another thing that I think is kind of like this concept of like the keeping your spend low but still enjoying life. Because one of the things that I've seen, even just hanging out with you guys in China and being digital nomads, like China was very affordable. Like I know we talked about it while we were there. We're just like, wow, compared to especially here in San Francisco, it's just like it's really crazy to see how a lot of us who are US based, the cost of existing is very high, the cost of living. But in the 5 years that I was a digital nomad, I was like, oh wow, this is way cheaper than everything in America. And or even what you were talking about of like finding places that are more affordable, or even if you're in a big city like San Francisco, finding a place that's rent stabilized. Or there's so many kind of like hacks for lowering your prices but still keeping, or lowering what you're spending but still keeping like a good quality of life. Like what would you guys say is like when we're talking about savings rate, what are some of the things that that you've been able to kind of think about when it comes to conceptualizing saving but still living life? Because I know that's something that a lot of people have questions about. If you're open to answering that.
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing to start doing is just track your spending. Nicole and I are not budgeters at all. We're aware of what we're spending, but I think what's more important is you look at your credit card statements or bank statements for us, it's a monthly basis, but it could be quarterly or weekly, depending what people like. And you put it into a spreadsheet or an app that tracks it for you. And if it breaks it down by category, even better, you can look at it every month and say like, okay, I ate out a little too much this month, or I have to dial back. Maybe my car that I just bought is more expensive than I thought it was going to be because I didn't account for the insurance and
Yeah.
the license and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I also wanted to add too, we used to be budgeters when we first started. And I think that's transitioned to we now really understand what we value. So we value travel, as you can see, we're away. We value travel and we value like our health and many other aspects we won't skimp out on. I think that's also, it has translated to like how we travel. Like we spend very similarly on similar things while we've been away. And like for reference, if anyone's curious, we spent $35,000 in the last year of living in Asia for the both of us for like everything. So we've really been able to keep costs low here by moving slowly. We eat a lot. We eat out almost every meal.
It's more affordable outside the US, but we don't have cars anymore.
Yeah.
So our transportation, people might say like, oh, isn't it expensive to have flights? But I think a lot of people in the US don't realize how expensive cars can be. So that was a huge expense we got rid of when we left.
Yeah. And even back where we used to live, we lived in the Midwest. So a much more affordable region than like the California region. We still did things like we, as Heather mentioned, like we drove like 20-year-old plus cars. We would cook our own meals. We would make our own coffee and have little dates out at the park instead of like going out like every night on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think what we really value now is like connections with people. So having interactions and time spent with family and friends, our health, as we said. So we'll spend on that and make sure it's optimized. And I don't know, just enjoying life. I don't think it comes with the price tag necessarily. Just like we could be just as content having hot pot and on the mountainside in China with with you and Kyle, and just chatting. Then I don't know, driving like a new fancy car. But that's just our personal preference, and everyone will be different.
Yeah, people should really figure out what they enjoy spending on, and don't hold back in those categories, but also figure out what you don't value and cut back in those categories.
Yeah. The value, I love the word that you guys talked about, what is valuable. And I love kind of, and when Kyle and I were full-time digital nomads, it was very much like a full kind of like speed run. And what did we value? And having to travel light, just like you, not as light as you guys, like you guys travel out of backpacks. That's crazy. But, traveling out of carry-on suitcases around the world. And trying to think about what do we actually value? What are the things we want to spend money on? What are the things we don't want to spend money on? And I think it's easy in the US sometimes to be on like autopilot of like, oh, everybody's spending on like fancy clothes or nice cars. Like we should just do that too. And it's easy to get like stuck in that. But what do you feel like is the biggest money mistake that creative professionals make in their 20s and 30s that can kind of create stumbling blocks for FI down the road?
Yeah, I think the biggest, and it's hard to say, but it is that maybe not investing sooner.
Mm.
I think you can say that though for every decade. But we wish we started investing sooner, and we know we invested pretty early on. But I think the biggest myths that like stopped us were, oh, we don't think we know enough. Like we need a financial advisor to invest, or we don't make enough money. We can't invest, or like our employer account is already investing for us. So those were like some myths we almost had.
And I think waiting to be debt free is a big thing. We should have been investing when we still had debt because it was low interest debt. The exception would be if you have credit card debt. Maybe that's interest rates are pretty high on credit cards these days. So that would be the exception. But, there's still opportunity to invest even if you're in debt.
Correct. So yeah, I would tell people that try not to be afraid of looking at your own financial situation. Look at it and make like a commitment to like your goals. Like it doesn't have to be overnight. I'm investing. Suddenly I opened every single investment account. I'm trading crypto. Like, we don't need to do anything. Like, like start very simply. On our blog, we break down a lot of different accounts, and online, there's so much information, free information online. That's how we learned. We are entirely self-taught. We actually used a financial advisor a few months ago for the first time ever. And we actually felt like we no longer need a financial advisor in this time of our lives. So we tried it out. And so I really do think people undersell, like, I don't know enough and it's scary. And it is scary. It's daunting to start. But if you take that first step and just are like honest and like also like forgiving with yourself, I don't think you'll regret it.
I love that. I love that. So now that you're financially independent, what do you feel like has changed in your day-to-day life from before when you were working as professionals?
Everything has changed.
I figured.
So yeah, obviously we were able to take this trip because of our financial independence. Even though we didn't hit that traditional retirement or traditional FI number, we were able to look at our finances and say, like, this is an important opportunity right now for us while we're still young
and healthy.
Healthy. Yeah, because we wanted to do things like hike in Nepal, learn to scuba dive and surf, and all of those things like took a toll on us, and we're really grateful that we can do it right now.
Beat up trying to surf.
Yes.
Surfing is hard.
Yes. It's much harder on the body than you think. Yeah.
Yeah, and and I remember when you guys were leaving China that you were going to go on that crazy hike in Nepal. How was it?
It was great. I describe it as the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. And now we're like, how can
Wow.
we do something else like that? We're like starting to look at hiking things. We're talking in like meters, like, that 4,100 meter mountain. Like we sound, we like learned a new language. I almost feel like we've unlocked different like personalities of ourselves, like the scuba diving community, the surfing community, the people that live in Spain and teach English, because we have been learning Spanish more. And so we're like, how can we like even like live in Spain or do something that like improves our language
for ourselves, basically.
Like, I don't know. I just feel like we have like an unlimited amount of personality options and like opportunity that like we felt so constricted with even while working towards FI at our old like 9-to-5 positions. So just that opportunity to step away has been like, we can't undersell how priceless it has been.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is really special. I think we might have talked about the book Die with Zero before, where it was like this concept. Yeah, the concepts, and I really thought that book was really great because it just covered so much of what you guys are talking about, which is, while you're young and healthy, that is the time to like go hard on these experiences that only happen once and get out there and see the world. And I definitely feel like that every year for my 5-year digital nomad journey, I was just like, this is the best thing and the best time to do this right now. And I'm so glad that I did this. And I think that it's cool, it was neat to meet you guys in China and to be able to like see you guys like living in like, and kind of having a life that feels very full and free. And speaking of freedom, like, what do you feel like, I mean, you've mentioned a little bit about this, but what do you feel like test driving early retirement actually looks like in practice, not just for you, but maybe other, FI couples that you've met, or just like in the fire community in general? What does test driving early retirement like really look like?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think test driving retirement is, I guess it's kind of getting a taste of what your retirement life could look like. That was what we thought at first, but I guess we liked it so much that, yeah, we now consider ourselves semi-retired, and we don't foresee ourselves going back to our old positions for sure in the same capacity and like for the same need. Like we don't have the same need to make income to survive, which we're very grateful for, but we also put a lot of hard work in over the last 10 years to get to this point.
Yeah, I think how that might apply to some of the writers listening. You can essentially shape your life however you want after you've reached some form of financial independence, whether that's location change, if you want to be abroad while you write, if you want to find remote work, you can. If you want freelance or seasonal work, it's the opportunities are endless, and you can pick up all these hobbies that you didn't feel like you had time for before, essentially.
It ultimately increases like your risk tolerance, especially achieving like the milestone of even like Coast Fi. Like you have a lot more risk tolerance to take on what others may perceive as risk, but to you it's going after a dream. But we'll just use risk because, but really, like you can dream, and like you will probably discover, like we've discovered things in our lives that like we never knew we were passionate about, and we've just gone after them, or we go after them, we're like, oh, we don't like that as much, maybe we'll do it this way. But we have like the time on our side of not working, but time is also never on your side. You never know how long you have or your health. So I think it's just, we're very grateful that we left at age 30 to do this for us. And yeah, it's been the best thing.
That's amazing. So, well, I have a few more questions to wrap up, but if anybody on the call has questions for Nicole and Tylor, feel free to leave it below. And so, basically, the question that I think is a lot of people's minds that they don't want to ask is, if somebody feels financially behind right now, what would you say to them?
I think our advice is, if it's very cliche, but the best time to start investing is today, if you haven't. Um, you know, with a small caveat I'll say is, if you have some high interest debt or something, that's something you have to work on first. But if you set up and take initiative for like learning about your finances, take the time to track your spending, I think is huge. Those things and those habits you create early on compound and grow on themselves, apart from compound interest working on your side too.
Yeah, and don't be hard on yourself. I think too, there's like an illusion that people around you are financially better off than you. We have met variances of people that either like say fund their lifestyle completely on debt, well, living on like lots and looking like they're living lavishly. But some people are feeling that entirely on like debt, which is also like, if you are doing that too, for anyone listening, like you can break that cycle. And what's important is not to compare yourself based off the optics of others. I think, I guess we like to surround ourselves with other people that think like to spend on similar things to like what we like to spend on, and we hang out with those types of people. But ultimately, I think I'm going on a weird loop of things, but you can finish my sentence.
Yeah. So what we don't want is for people to compare themselves, because you don't know what people are saving. You might see what they're spending. But I think, as we've discussed in this call, that what you're saving, if you're trying to reach FI, is much more important than what you're spending. So comparison can be the thief of joy.
It is, and you can do it. You really can. If we did what we did, we know everyone on this call can too. We actually are very ordinary. Despite our name, not sure
we don't have any. We don't have any sort of like financial background. With everything we learned was essentially self-taught. We didn't go to school for it. So that's all we can say is, if you put the time in, you can learn it and you can achieve it.
Yes.
And what does financial freedom actually buy you beyond money?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Essentially, it's time to take literally time off, choices, endless choices, and flexibility. I think flexibility is like the most undersold. Like flexibility in the sense of I want to take a little bit of time off, but I also want to go back to work, but do something different, or I want to cover just part of my expenses for a little bit, but then I want to do this. I think like even if you're not fully financially independent, even something like Coast-Fi provides so much flexibility and flexibility of your mindset and money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And then finally, to wrap up, what does not an ordinary plan really mean? And if you could also tell us a little bit about your Substack and your blog and your online presence, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So we have been working on this Not Your Ordinary Plan blog for a couple years now, and just recently got into the Substack space, which has been really nice because of all this extra time. As we've said, we've had a lot of extra time to be creative during this trip. So I think a Not Your Ordinary Plan is something that's ever evolving. You can pursue any sort of passions that come your way as you see fit. When you get this freedom and flexibility from financial independence, then you can do those things.
Yeah. And honestly, we really hope that it becomes ordinary to do what we're doing. So it's kind of ironic. Like, not your ordinary plan of achieving financial independence. I hope everyone that's listening, like, you can think this, you can make it ordinary, like, not a taboo topic. Like, we've learned to talk to so many people, just like you and Kyle randomly, like, oh yeah, financial, like, we're just talking to people in the streets, spreading the word. That's kind of just always been our goal, like, of our blog, Substack, and Instagram, which kind of shows like more what we're up to. Is just to talk to more people about it and make more people aware. And we're having fun doing it.
Yeah. And then what would you say if there's one piece of content that somebody could start with of yours? What would be a good kind of like first blog post, article, about page, or something that people should start with to get to know you two and everything that that you think would be like a good starting point for your story and who you are and what you share?
Yeah, we have a blog post about our financial journey, which I think is a good way to realize that this path is something anyone can do. We weren't the people who you would see in high school that are like, oh, they're going to be those financial gurus retiring at 30. Like,
College or
like we were never those people, 10 years ago. But that's a good post. And then I think the different types of FI. We have another blog post that really digs into all the nuances with Coast-Fi, Barista-Fi, and a couple of the other flavors that we didn't introduce in this call, but maybe people are curious about.
Yeah, and our Substack, we have been slowly, we actually only started it not too long ago. And big shout out to you, Amy. You actually encouraged us to start a Substack when we were chatting. We had actually never really thought of it ever before hearing it from you. So we've started on our Substack to talk a bit more about topics that are related to FI. So you can always look through our old posts and look into our blog. There's a lot of old links. I also think a post called Order of Investing is like one of our biggest. I think that's more of like the financial nitty gritty of how you order and optimize your finances.
Yeah, people just starting out would learn a lot from how to get a hold of their finances from that post, for sure.
So check out our blog, Substack. You can also feel free to like message us. We love connecting with other people. It's actually probably the reason we're continuing to keep posting. Sometimes it can be a little bit weird to put yourself out there, especially with money. But honestly, like if anyone watching, has questions for us, we're more than happy to like chat online through like Substack, Instagram, or even through our email on our blog. So we're happy to do that.
And it's amazing. And I think that, and thank you for being transparent about finances, because I do think it's such a topic that is so taboo and yet is something that powers everything and determines whether or not you can go diving or go on a hike to Nepal or not. And I think it's really cool what you guys are up to. And I love your work. And I'm going to get your links to everything that you mentioned and send it out with the replay so that people can check out all those posts. But thank you guys again. And then can you just to let us know the URL of your Substack? Is it notyourordinaryplan.com? So so we can make sure everybody knows where to go too?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everybody who joined. And I'll send out the replay after this call. And I hope you guys have a great day in Thailand.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Amy, and to everyone listening. Yes, we're more than happy to connect with everybody, and we're so grateful for the opportunity. So until we see you next time, Amy, somewhere in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.